Welcome to a crossover edition of Locked On Pelicans, Locked On Thunder. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm the Pelicans host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on X. He is Rylan Stiles, host of Locked On Thunder. Rylan, you've got to be feeling pretty good here.
Oh, it feels great right now if you're the Thunder. I mean, you go 2-0, you hold serve at home, and you cap it off with a just dominating win. Everything feels right for Oklahoma City.
Yeah, and you're coming to New Orleans too, so that's going to be a lot of fun here. Hopefully, maybe I'll make a return trip, who knows, back to Oklahoma City here, depending on how this goes. We are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join Thunder fans on YouTube, Pelicans fans on YouTube, and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans, Locked On Thunder, or whatever your Locked On show of choice is. So let's start with this. Thunder up 2-0. Obviously, you're feeling pretty good about that. As you've watched them play, what's your just general feeling around the team right now?
Yeah, I think that you have to feel really confident if you're viewing this from a Thunder prism. One of the reasons why you feel confident is because the defense has been so consistent. Back-to-back 92-point games, but the way that they got to 92 points, not only is that a low number, but you're not letting Brandon Ingram go off, and you're not having these random Trey Murphy games yet, and you're really content with living with whatever Valanciunas does, whether he has a massive stat line on very good efficiency in game one, or he misses a couple bunnies and Chet deters a couple shots in game two. No matter how Valanciunas is the one that's scoring, you like that option if you're OKC. And then their length is just a lot for their ball handlers to handle. I mean, the Pelicans lack a true table-setting playmaker. CJ McCollum's their best option, and the Thunder's length and size has been blowing up actions and not letting the Pelicans really have any sort of organization offensively. So you have to be feeling really good on both ends if you're Oklahoma City.
You mentioned Brandon Ingram here, right? Because that's a huge focal point of this from the Pelicans side of things, and his just straight up struggles. He was non-existent in the first half of game two. You said them not letting him get anything. Is that Lou Dort and his defense, or is that also on Brandon Ingram, do you think, too?
Yeah, I see this notion from a lot of Pelicans fans, and I mean, you guys watch Brandon Ingram more intimately than I do, but I'm not really sure what there is for Ingram to do. I mean, he's gotten like 3 quality looks all series long, and they've all gone down. One of them was from Lou Dort simply flopping his way to being out of position at the nail, and then another one was a mischased screen by the Thunder, and one was an advantageous switch for getting Jalen Williams onto Ingram, who, despite being lengthy to defend Ingram, is not actually that good of a matchup for Ingram because Ingram seems to be more bothered by smaller guys than the longer guys who can contest him. So I've seen the pressure put on Brandon Ingram. I think it's a mixture of Lou Dort's just really, really good and the perfect kind of style of defender to harm Ingram. And like we said, the Pelicans are not helping him out in the form of facilitation or in the form of letting him get freed up off ball. And the screens that they're setting are either
they're terrible, actually. They're terrible. Like, they're real bad.
Either too easy to fight through or they're simply illegal. And so it's like there's nothing more for Ingram to do. I would be curious what the opposition to Ingram is, other than he only got off 10 shot attempts in game two. I think a larger part of that was the Thunder versus Ingram.
I think it's a mix of both, right? I think part of it is his style of play too, right? This is a guy whose entire game is built around taking and making tough shots, and the Thunder are very content with letting him do that. Notice they're not doubling him really, right? Like, that to me, given that he's the focal point of the offense, or should be the focal point of the offense, strikes me as surprising. And then you think about it, well, if he's not going to try and get to the rim, if he's not going to take threes and he's just going to take long mid-rangers, the Thunder are going to be thrilled with something like that, right? Even if you have a good game where you make those sorts of shots, it's how you and I probably both kind of viewed game one for the Thunder in their shooting, right? Process over results. They took really good looks from three. They just didn't fall in game one. And if they do, that might be a 10-point win for the Thunder. It really did in game two. And look at how they kind of ran away with it, right? After game one, say they even had lost that, they probably would have felt really good going into game two and being able to win this series as well. So Brandon, it's kind of the reverse of it for Brandon Ingram. You're going to be fine with him taking some of these really tough shots that even if he's making them, let's say, cool, that means the offense is a little bit out of rhythm. Those aren't going to, he's not going to stay hot for the whole series. And so they're content just to kind of play him a little bit physical and force him into those tough shots, which he's more than happy to take. And if you can't get this Oklahoma City, there we go, I can say this, Thunder team rotating on defense, they're going to turn you over. They're going to put pressure, and that's where you're seeing a lack of offense, I think, come from New Orleans a good bit.
Yeah, you're seeing the offense not be able to put the Thunder in a compromised position, and whenever they do, they're not able to take advantage of it because of the lack of creative passing. And
Yeah.
with the Thunder, like even whenever they're living with certain things, right? Like having Lu Dort fight over screens, yes, it might open up a window for a Herb Jones roll, or it might open up a Valanciunas, in the dunker spot type of opportunity, or rolling to the rim opportunity. They don't really care about that. Like they care about cutting that out the snake for CJ and Ingram. And if you don't have tough shot makers against the Thunder, and you want to boil this down to hitting tough twos, going back and forth, the Thunder have the toughest, 2-point maker in the NBA in SGA. Like he is the very best at it. And so the Thunder will win that style of fight as they did on Sunday if it's predicated on defense. And then, like you said, if the shots are falling on Wednesday, it's going to be a blowout win for OKC. And that's been the story all year long. Like for as much as we talk about the playoffs and the atmosphere changes and the game changes, so far through 2 playoff games for the Thunder, it won't stay this way. But so far, it's been the same story as the regular season.
Yeah, no, this is the team that we saw. And I think it's a little bit interesting that, maybe the Thunder were being somewhat disrespected or a little bit underrated going into the playoffs. There was a lot of talk about wanting to dodge the Denver Nuggets in the first round, right? Whether you're the Lakers, should you lose that game to the Pelicans so that you can get OKC? And maybe they're a better matchup with OKC having won the season series and everything like that, certainly, than Denver might be for them. But at the same point, I mean, look at what this team's doing right now, what the Thunder are doing. I don't think anyone was expecting game 2 to be that bad for New Orleans, but this is a team that has the 4th best defense going into the postseason, the 3rd best offense. They're a very complete team, and I think people maybe lost sight of that a little bit with this franchise, and it's coming kind of back into play here where people are like, oh yeah, SGA is really good. Chet Holmgren is playing really well. We'll get into him a little bit more in the 3rd segment because you kind of talked about him and Valanciunas, and I want to touch on that later here. So let me ask you this, a prediction. How far do you think this series goes right now?
Yeah, right now, I think it's still hard to predict a sweep. I think that the Thunder saw firsthand last year, even though they won, how difficult it is to win in New Orleans. I mean, they scraped by in that game. They obviously didn't have Chet last year, but it was a tough one that needed a huge Josh Giddey game, and all the big proponents of the Thunder played really well, but that was a dogfight, and this is going to be a dogfight, this weekend in New Orleans as well. I would give the Pelicans a game in the Smoothie King Center, whether that be Saturday, where the Thunder have typically struggled in the afternoon tips, or it be on Monday. I think they're going to get one, send the series back to OKC, but that's really as far as I think that things can go with this current iteration of the Pelicans that have Ingram not looking like himself and no Zion.
No, they're lacking creation, right? And no Zion really hurts. There's just no one that can draw 2. There's no one that can draw a double team. And if you're just going to let this team, which is a good defense, play you one-on-one, which is what New Orleans is doing right now, that's a big part of it. I don't know if every screen the Pelicans are setting is illegal. We don't need to go too much into the officiating here with everything. But one of the things on the screen setting, Ingram's not even waiting for them either. And that's partially why they're getting some of those illegal screen calls, is he sees someone coming and he wants to start his move, whether he's a little rattled or whatever. And then he gets that defender running into a guy that's not yet set, not yet planted. And they're going to call some of those as illegal screens, even if head coach Willie Green thinks there's some flopping going on with that. So just, I don't know, being a little bit more settled might go a long way. And maybe even though New Orleans is not a good home team this year, just being at home maybe calms you down a little bit, settles you down a little bit. And that could make a pretty big difference, I think, and help New Orleans maybe get back into this series. So coming up next, you want to talk about the Pelicans defense and what the heck they're doing. And I am more than happy to explain it because I don't know if there's a solution to this. That's coming up here next in a crossover episode of Locked On Pelicans, Locked On Thunder. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, Locked On Thunder is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. There's a 2024 Nissan Rogue, which is perfect for city drives and great escapes. And with class-exclusive Google built in, it's your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. So gone are the days of plugging in your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, Google Play Store are all built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. There's also the 2024 Nissan Armada, which is going to change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style, tow bigger, and explore further with the 2024 Nissan Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Armada, or the Nissan Pathfinder and shop NissanUSA.com for your next big adventure. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, Locked On Thunder is also presented to you by our sponsor, BetterHelp. You know, sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing. I think the fans of both teams are going to be thinking about this. Officiating. Right? Is it good? Is it bad? It's a little inconsistent in this series, but maybe consistent everywhere else. Or maybe you're just tired of opposing fans complaining about it when they've gotten blown out. That's a very valid thing too. So getting things off your chest can be important, and therapy can be different for everybody. And most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports teams, but it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans, Locked On Thunder your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday. We're covering everything you want to know about your favorite team. There's a Locked On show for everybody, but also we've got a couple of national shows. And if you're tired of listening to Fox Sports, ESPN yell at you all day long, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today is going to bring you the can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There's playoff basketball. There's the NFL draft. Get caught up on all of it over at the Locked On Sports Today channel. All right, Rylan, you want to talk some defense in the Pelicans here? Because you got some thoughts.
I do. I have many thoughts, and I want to admit that this is what I think makes Locked On special, is the willingness to admit this. I don't want to judge Willie Green off of 2 games, watching him very intimately. I think that my overall opinion of Willie Green coming into this season was very positive, so I don't want these 2 games to detract from what I used to think about Willie Green, but watching these 2 games, it's just head-scratching. Number one, going back to the illegal screens for a minute, you and I, no matter how many times we watch these 2 teams and pod about these teams, do not know more than NBA coaches, but even we understood.
I always say that on the show, right? Like, it's really easy to come in and be like, I'm better than this. No, they have so much more info and they know so much more than we do. Like, it's worth mentioning.
Yes, they know way more than we do. One of the things that they absolutely know, which is why I don't really understand who to put the blame on the illegal screen, category, is that Lu Dort is the best illegal screen drawer in the NBA, and he consistently leads the NBA in offensive fouls drawn. And it's based off of, to kind of boil it down to a very simple tactic of just attacking the outside hip. And if you're coming up to the set of screen, if either your ball handler does not let the screen get set and get, of course, set to place the screen, or your screener's a little too open, a little too lazy, whenever a guy Lu Dort's size is barreling into your back hip, it's going to stumble you. It's going to make it look to the official in real time, who's got to observe so many different things, like it was absolutely an illegal screen. And to an extent, it is. That's how you draw illegal screens. That's how illegal screens happen, is by the ball handler being too rushed. So I refuse to believe Willie Green has not preached that message to this Pelicans team about Lu Dort and about this Thunder team. So, do you put that on the players? Do you put that on him? That's the first and foremost thing of just how this team has looked a little ill-prepared, and it could be just simply they're gassed, they're shorthanded, and they're playing on the road.
So that's really good insight just on how to attack the screens and knowing your guy in Lu Dort, right? That's truly the power of Locked On right here with what you just said. That was awesome. In terms of preparation. So yes, right. There are, we don't actually know more than coaches and things like that. Although, man, there's been a couple times this season with Willie Green when I'm like, maybe I actually do, to the point where I admitted I don't know as much. And he has, there's moments when I'm like, Yeah, no, that's like completely wrong, and I don't know what's going on there. And so the lack of preparation in this series is actually kind of shocking. And Jonas Valanciunas said it after game 2, right? He's like, they were more physical than we were, and we weren't prepared for that. We weren't expecting that. And after going through game 1, where that defense, particularly from Lou Dort, was insanely physical, and Brandon Ingram even said after game 1, let him be physical with me. I'll be ready for it, right? To have a player on your team be like, oh yeah, we weren't expecting them to be that physical is just kind of like, what? Like, what are we doing here, right? Like, that is genuinely shocking to me, and something that I'm talking about on my Friday episode as well for Locked On. So it's like, I don't know, man. Like, I wish I had an answer to that. And trust me, you know, we're the talking heads. We're supposed to have answers for this sort of thing. And I don't have one on kind of them being unprepared for this series, it feels like.
Yeah. And then the second thing that I think that Willie Green will catch a lot of heat for this series is another conversation I think is multi-layered, and one that you need to help us with here. When you watch the Thunder try to defend the go-to scorer, it is Lou Dort fighting through every single screen and not even thinking for a split second about switching screens and just locking in onto Brandon Ingram, because we've addressed that he's the perfect mold to defend Brandon Ingram. Whenever you look at the opposite side of the floor, the perfect mold to defend Shai, the only guy who has consistently found success against him in his life of being a number 1 30-point per game scorer, has been Herb Jones. And yet there's plays, Jake, where Josh Giddey is setting a screen and Larry Nance is switching on the Shai, and Herb is just content with falling back to Josh Giddey. And I don't want to say anything negative about Josh Giddey. There's no negative about what Lou Dort does either, but you're willing to live with Trey Murphy, Josh Giddey, Herb Jones, these type of guys beating you offensively, then you are willing to live with just Shai getting whatever he wants, which he gets whenever you switch Nance on him and Valanciunas on him. And to that point, though, whenever I go in the Pelicans locker room and ask them why they're so good at defending Shai, they give a lot of credit to Herb, but also give a lot of credit to throwing a ton of bodies at him. So at some point, you wonder, is this just Shai being one of the best scorers in the world, and there's not much else that they could have done?
Yeah, so I think this is kind of one of those problems without a solution, though I think you'll see some big adjustments in game 3 for this. And this is something I talked about when I did my live post-game show after game 2. And you and I were texting about this during the game. Like, your text to me, I'll read it out here because this is what the hosts do here, right? He said, Pels have to stop switching, with have to in all caps here. Herb leaving Shai to go with Giddey and having Nance outside is criminal, right? Like, so what the Pelicans do defensively is they switch everything. That's why they tend to close games with Larry Nance Jr. over Jonas Valanciunas. Jonas can't do that on the perimeter. You kind of saw that early on in game 2, where he was getting lit up in situations. They like Larry Nance Jr. because they want to switch everything, and that's made them kind of good this year. They don't have rim protection, so by switching everything, you just prevent people from getting into the paint by not allowing anyone to get that kind of first step, even if it means you're going to be cross-matched and you have a bit of a mismatch there. So part of this is, look, Shai's just really good. Like, Shai's just really, really good. And whoever you kind of put on him, he's going to be able to go. So even though your switching scheme normally works, and they have the 6th best defense this year, it's not like this was a bad defensive team, right? Like, that is a proven strategy that worked over the course of the year. It's not working in the playoffs where star players take over, and Shai is just doing that right now. So they tried something different. They tried something different in game 2, right? Because if you look at that game, or if you look at the switching game 1, he hit that go ahead and one when Herb was on him. The Giddey set a screen, Herb switched on to Giddey, and then that put CJ McCollum onto Shai, and he just took him off the dribble, right? Then got the foul call, went to the line, it was a 3-point play. You had Herb on him. Why are you switching, right? That was a big issue for me in game 1. They switched less at the start of game 2. They switched less at the start of game 2 and tried to fight through some of those screens. They're not great at fighting through screens because they haven't really done that all season long. This is just not what they do. They're certainly capable of it. Herb and other players can do that. But if you're not used to doing that over 82 games and now you're just starting to do it, it's not necessarily a skill, in my opinion, that's probably built up. So they started doing that, trying to fight through screens, which kept a little bit of room on the perimeter. But because they were dying on those screens, someone had to rotate over. So all of a sudden, a shooter is now just one pass away. And what did the Thunder shoot in the first quarter from 3 in that one? I can pull it up here, right? It was like 60-something%.
Yeah, it was like 60%.
Yeah, they were 7 for 11 from three, 63.6% here, right? That was because these guys were dying on the screen. A help guy would come over, and the Pelicans were constantly rotating on defense. So they did what you said, right? Fight through screens, don't switch. And that then burned them from 3-point range in that first quarter of game 2. So they went back to switching. They tried some zone at times, and all that allowed the Thunder to do was just put Shai at the free throw line, get him matched up one-on-one with Larry Nance Jr., just take him off the dribble. That didn't work. They've tried multiple things, and none of it's worked. And so what I'm assuming you're going to see, and I'm going to be curious your thoughts on how this could go for New Orleans, is I wonder if they're just going to throw two bodies at Shai. Right? Like, I think on a screen at this point, don't switch, right? Don't fight through it. Just throw two bodies on him, right? Don't switch and then have the other guy fight through the screen to try and just keep two on him. Someone's going to be open then, right? That's how this works. We're talking about the Pelicans and their lack of doing that. But at a certain point, that's better than Shai beating you. Look, Josh Giddey scores 30 and they win, but Shai is held to a limited game. Like, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I think that's the only real solution to this problem, and that's why the Thunder have won 57 games. I think that people forget to talk about this team as a team that won 57 games in the toughest conference we've ever seen. Like, this is like insane that this is some sort of a new discovery for many people whenever looking at this Thunder team. But the only thing you can do, I think, is throw those extra bodies at Shai, and I think that you would reverse the logic from what the Pelicans, I think, tried to do in game 1 and in game 2 of this series for the most part, is throw all of your bodies at Shai. And because you're so long and athletic, I think that being long and athletic is what convinced Willie Green and the Pelicans to go ahead and switch, because you feel comfortable with the rest of your guys.
And a lack of rim protection, but yeah.
Yeah, and that as well. But you feel comfortable with your guys that you can just throw these guys at Shai and they can all hold their own as best you can against a superstar like that if they get switched on to him. The thing that I would do is exactly what you're saying. Throw your guys at Shai and trust that whoever didn't go to Shai, if you're throwing two guys at him, is long and athletic enough to get back to a rolling Giddey or a rolling Dort or J-Dub that is rolling or open and contest the shot. And the problem for the Pelicans and every team, this is not a Pelicans exclusive problem, is whenever you look at the starting five, Shai is a good enough passer to find the opening crease. That's exactly what he did to start the game, where he had 0 shot attempts at the first time out, but had a lot of hockey assists and a lot of creative passing. He's good enough to find the next guy. And when you look at the starting five only, before the Thunder even try to go with an all-out offensive lineup, the starting five only, who of Lou Dort, who went and hit 4 triples last night on 6 attempts, Lou Dort, Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren, who would you want to leave open in that case? I mean, it'd be Josh Giddey, obviously, but if you leave a 6'9" guy open, rolling to the rim, he's bound to hit the layup where he's had his best rim finishing stretch of his career since March 1st till now. And we know what he's done in New Orleans for that little bit of tidbit trivia. So, like, there's just a
pick your noted Pelican killer, man. Like that dude.
Killer. And there's just a pick your poison element to this Thunder team that I think has put them in the position to win 57 games. But you've got to try. You've got to try something different. And I think that the zone, I think that junking up zone periodically throughout the game is your best bet, because it does take the Thunder historically this whole season, and in that game too, even with everything clicking, it does take them a couple possessions to get accustomed to playing their zone offense or their zone busting offense. So going back and forth as much as you can throughout the game, as much as you can handle, I think would be also another good solution for the Pelicans.
Yeah, and look, they need to get some stops, right? There's a debate here of should they lean more offensively, should they lean more defensively, and I'm not exactly sure what it is. Part of it is the Pelicans' offense in the half court is not great, not elite. They thrived off forcing turnovers, getting out and running. The Thunder don't turn the ball over, and also if you're inbounding the ball, or their defense can get back at set, turn you over again, and then now you're not doing the same thing to the Thunder, and that creates a big problem here. They need to get some fast break points and in transition and get out there and score. And they did not do that in game 2, where they just had 6, right? Like, that's going to be a huge problem, I think. So finding just something that works defensively, easier said than done. But I think there's enough info from game 1, game 2 to know like what they're doing right now, even though it worked in the regular season, is not working. And there needs to be a bigger adjustment coming with that. Finding a way to stop Shai from just hunting a guy like CJ McCollum, I think, is dramatically important for them to have a chance in in this series. So coming up next, let's talk about the big men, because Chet Holmgren had himself a game in game 2. Him and Valanciunas, him and Nance, I think is really interesting to look at. Let's take a look at those kind of matchups coming up here next in a crossover episode of Locked On Thunder and Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Thunder, Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, because LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. You've got a small business. It takes everyone. It's all hands on deck. You have a missing person there. You're stretching the rest of your employees thin. It might be costing you money. You can't deal with that, right? LinkedIn isn't just another job board, though. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a pro on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. They make it easy, and that's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you for making Locked On Thunder, Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Tell your friends about Locked On Thunder, Locked On Pelicans. Get them clued into what's going on. It's the postseason. One of these teams is going to be in the offseason soon, and we're going to be looking towards that. We cover it all here as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. How you feeling about Chet, Rylan? He's a rookie. That was an impressive game, too.
You have to feel really good about Chet. I think even in game 1, people did not give Valanciunas enough credit in game 1, surprisingly, because it wasn't as though he was just knocking Chet to the third row. He had some really difficult shots whenever Chet had good positioning on him, and Chet was contesting at the rim. But the soft touch of Valanciunas is where he found success in game 1. And then in game 2, Chet deterred more of those shots. Chet got a couple blocks, and Chet got a few tap-out rebounds where maybe it doesn't go to Chet's log on the rebound, but that's what created some rebound advantages for the Thunder. His ability to respond, and I think that what makes this team so different from typical young teams and just typical stars in general is that they don't buy into narratives and they don't get kind of goaded into playing outside themselves. Like whenever Valanciunas, you hear all the talk, even after a win in game 1, all the talk is about Valanciunas and the rebounding and the struggling down low. And then Valanciunas rips off 11 straight points in game 1. You easily could have, as a competitor, just tried to take it upon yourself to go make a statement and play outside of yourself and really press the issue. Same with SGA, who didn't have an MVP caliber game on Sunday and then does on Wednesday, but they let it happen through the flow of the game, which I think was so impressive and so important for these two teams. But for Chet specifically, I don't think that Valanciunas can guard Chet. Like, I think that there's just no shot.
He can't. I think that's pretty obvious, right? That was a big concern of mine going into this series. The center position has been a problem for New Orleans. Like, I get that a lot of people are just simply literally looking at the two people and looking at Valanciunas and being bulkier than Chet is and being like, Valanciunas can take him, or he can't guard him, or whatever it might be. That simply hasn't been the case this series, right? Like, Chet has won that matchup easily, I think.
Yeah, very easily. And especially in game 2, in the sense of, and in both games, like I said, like Valanciunas hit tough shots in game 1. If he's going to have a soft touch around the rim, especially at this stage of his career, you tip your cap and you move on. And in game 2, he missed a couple of ones that he hit in game 1. Chet deterred a couple of them. And you end up seeing that it plays right into the thing we discussed most importantly over the weekend in our season series preview. Even if Valanciunas has a 2020 game, it does not matter. Like, it does not matter. It's not going to impact winning in any significant way. We don't talk about big men this way, but it is just the version of stat padding and not winning for your team.
No, I'm with you, right? Like I'm with you. You know, Valanciunas had those 11 straight points and then quickly regressed and got played off the court defensively, right? Like Chet went out and hit a bunch of threes and he can't do anything about that. And he can't play out there in space. And when you pull him out there, cool, it's even easier for guys to get to the rim against New Orleans there. And that's why they ended up rolling with, you know, Larry Nance Jr. I will say at a certain point, I wonder if they've just got to stick with JV and see if you can maybe get some sort of advantage when it comes to the rebounding, something like that. But one thing that I think worth noting is I don't know if rebounding is going to really impact this series a whole lot. You know, the Thunder haven't been a good defensive rebounding team all year long, right? Like that's one of the areas that they just do not do a tremendous job with. And it's fine. It's fine when you force turnovers like that and you play defense the other way that they play, right? That was kind of built into how they've molded themselves this season. So beating them up on the offensive glass doesn't really matter because look, New Orleans has gotten a lot of second chance points, but it's not at the efficiency that you would want. Right in that first game, I think they had 24 second chance points on 18 offensive boards. That number for points should have been way higher, but that speaks to the defensive advantage it seems like that Oklahoma City has here.
Yeah, that's been their entire MO this season.
Yeah,
they're gonna turn you over, and what I would look at point one, and it's not as simple as this, but for the sake of podcast, let's make it this simple. The Pelicans, whenever you net out the second chance points, were a plus 13. Whenever you net out the fast break points, the Thunder were a plus 13. So at that point, at that point it's even. You've counteracted the biggest advantage the Pelicans have, and then you have every other advantage. You have the shooting advantage, you have the shot making advantage, you have the defensive advantage, you have every other advantage that there is. So if you can just get out and run, as the Thunder have all year long, then you're going to be fine, and you're going to negate that weakness. And even if you can't get out and run, you're still able to give away one flaw, because I would look around in the NBA, as we said last Saturday, even the almighty Celtics all the way down to the Pistons, like they all have flaws, some larger than others. The Thunder's flaws are really boiled down to two. Even the biggest critics of the Thunder can only muster up rebounding and inexperience. And one of those issues, like that's not even fixable. Like you cannot just get older in one calendar year. And the other issue is like, yeah, okay, they're a bad rebounding team, but many other teams have more than two issues, or at least two. So like no team's perfect. You're never going to create a perfect roster ever. So like this is just a disadvantage the Thunder have to work around, and they have, to the tune of 57 wins and a 2-0 series lead.
Yeah, no, like they know that they're at a disadvantage with that, so they've kind of just built around it, and with that in mind, right? And it's not just this thing they're like, oh, that's our fatal flaw here. Like, yeah, it's a disadvantage, but if everything else is going well, like you're going to be fine with it, and that's what I think you're seeing from this Thunder team in this series, and it's actually pretty impressive overall. You know, I've come away with a lot more respect for this team. I had a lot of respect for him anyway. SGA is one of my favorite players to watch, but watching them in this series, just how well executed everything has impressed me. And man, Chet plays tougher than he looks, right? It looks like a stick, don't get me wrong, but he there's more strength to him, I think, than people realize. Brandon Ingram tried to like initiate contact on him, and he didn't move at all. It maybe would have been different with Zion Williamson, but that's not the case in the series, and that's not the reality, so it doesn't end up mattering right now that, you know, if the Pelicans aren't going to play, in Willie Green's words, with force, with aggression, right? I don't know. It's an uphill battle. You know, I think the optimists for the Pelicans can look at it of like, OKC won at home. That's what they're supposed to do, right? The series doesn't start until someone wins on the road. But there isn't a ton, and this sounds very pessimistic, but it's the reality of the situation. There isn't a ton that makes you think New Orleans is going to be able to kind of flip this around going into Game 3, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't really know what you would grasp at to feel confident. I mean, whenever the biggest takeaway that I could find is maybe as you collapse in the paint to try to stop Valanciunas, maybe he can fire it out to Trey Murphy, and Trey Murphy can hit 10 threes. When you're counting on
That'd
that, like, that's a good formula to win one game. But
Yeah.
Trey Murphy's not going to hit 10 threes 4 times in a row. He's not going to win. He's not going to hit 10 threes in a game before the Thunder win 3 more, win 2 more to win the series. So there's just not that much hope around the Pelicans team. And it sucks, because I do think that Zion, especially the way that he played on that Tuesday playing game against the Lakers, would have dramatically changed things. Obviously, that's a kind of does statement, but not getting to see that as a basketball fan does suck. But you're right. I think that the Pelicans fan base wouldn't be feeling as bad, or in my opinion, they wouldn't be feeling as bad if people just talked about the center team the way that they deserve to be talked about. Like there's no
part of
shame
it's
in
that,
losing to this
right?
team.
Like a big part of it's that, like, that's kind of the narrative aspect of this, right? Like, people forgot how good this team was. People forgot how good the Thunder were. Doesn't mean New Orleans should be this bad in a series against them. Don't get me wrong with that, right? And they've looked bad. But people forgot about this. All of it was that talk of, should the Lakers tank? Everyone wants to avoid Denver. The Thunder are a better matchup than Denver. Like, yeah, no. And clearly the Thunder have a lot to prove with it, and it's leading to this. But look, you also have to play the games for a reason. We've seen crazier things. And who knows if coming back to New Orleans allows them to make some of these adjustments to maybe get back in the series. Because as we talked about, there's things they can do to defend Shai a little bit easier. And maybe Brandon Ingram breaks out of the slump he's in, gets aggressive, starts attacking a little bit more, and is ready for Lou Dort's physical style of defense. If they can do that, who knows what the series is going to look like come Monday. But Saturday, it's going to be an uphill climb for New Orleans, but I think they're going to be up for the challenge. So I'm excited to watch the game. I'm excited for you to be here in New Orleans. We're going to hang out at some point. I know, go get drinks, dinner, all of the stuff here in New Orleans. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Any final words on this one?
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun. I think that to leave the Pelicans fan base on a positive note, role players and contributors shoot better at home. Like, they just do. Like, so shot variance tends to favor the home team. You've had two just awful shooting nights and nearly won a game. Get that back to the average, or have a your own shooting night where you're shooting above your skis, as the Thunder did on Wednesday. Then who knows what can happen? And you steal a game at home and you extend the series and extend your season. And the more games you play, the more randomness that there is.
There you go. He is Rylan Stiles, host of Locked On Thunder. I'm Jake Madison, host of Locked On Pelicans. Make your second listen Locked On NBA. It's going to cover everything about all the other games going on around the association as well. Appreciate y'all listening. Please subscribe to Locked On Thunder. Subscribe to Locked On Pelicans. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.